The massive Zarkax warship emerged from hyperspace, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight across Earth's atmosphere in dazzling patterns. Supreme Commander Vexthor stood on the command deck, his iridescent scales shifting from deep purple to confident gold as he observed the blue planet below. The humans had detected their arrival. Primitive radar systems tracking their fleet's movement, desperate radio signals bouncing between their military installations. Amusing, Vexthor commented to his second-in-command, analyzing the frantic human responses. They still use radio waves for communication. Initiate the standard conquest protocol. But Captain Sirella's scales flickered with uncertainty. Supreme Commander, our advanced scouts report. Anomalies in human behavior patterns. They don't match any previously conquered species. Elaborate. Vexthor commanded, his attention still fixed on the strategic display showing Earth's major population centers. The humans, they're not panicking. Their military bases are mobilizing with unexpected efficiency. And their civilian populations, they're following organized evacuation protocols we've never seen before. Vexthor dismissed her concerns with a gesture. Irrelevant. Their technological level is barely Category 2. They haven't even colonized their own moon. Begin the demonstration strike. The Galactic Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds using the same proven methodology. First, demonstrate overwhelming force. Then, demand surrender. Finally, establish control through superior technology and military might. It had never failed. The demonstration strike targeted a small, uninhabited island in what humans called the Pacific Ocean. A single energy beam from the flagship vaporized it instantly, leaving nothing but steam and molten rock where land had existed for millions of years. Broadcast the terms of surrender, Vexthor ordered, expecting the usual response. Terror, followed by submission. The response came quickly, but not in the form he expected. A single transmission, broadcast simultaneously from multiple human military installations. To the alien forces in Earth orbit, we acknowledge your technological superiority. We recognize your greater firepower. And we strongly advise you to leave our solar system immediately. You have 1 hour to comply. Laughter erupted across the command deck, a natural reaction from a species that had never known defeat. But Captain Sirella's scales had shifted to deep green, a sign of genuine concern. Supreme Commander, I've been analyzing their historical records. These humans, they've spent their entire existence fighting themselves. Their entertainment, their games, their stories, they're obsessed with conflict. They've simulated every possible scenario of alien invasion thousands of times. Enough. Vexthor interrupted. Their primitive simulations mean nothing against real combat experience. Launch the first wave of ground forces. Target their military installations and government centers. Show them the price of defiance. As the invasion pods descended through Earth's atmosphere, the humans launched their first counterattack. It was unlike anything in the Empire's combat records. Civilian vessels, hastily armed with primitive but effective weapons, swarmed the larger Zarkax ships. Commercial satellites suddenly changed orbit, sacrificing themselves to create debris fields that played havoc with Imperial targeting systems. And most disturbing of all, the humans were laughing. Radio transmissions intercepted from human fighters revealed not fear, but excitement. They quoted lines from what appeared to be entertainment programs about alien invasions, sharing jokes even as they fell in battle. It was, as Captain Sirella had warned, completely outside Imperial psychological combat models. The first wave of ground forces reported even stranger resistance. Humans used their own destroyed infrastructure as weapons, turning debris into traps. Their soldiers fought with total disregard for standard combat protocols, employing tactics that seemed suicidal but proved devastatingly effective. Supreme Commander, Sirella reported, her scales now pulsing with urgent patterns. We're receiving reports from all invasion zones. The humans, they're not fighting to win battles. They're fighting to make us pay for every meter we take. and they're broadcasting something across all frequencies. They call it heavy metal music. Vexthor's scales shifted to deep red as he watched his carefully planned invasion dissolve into chaos. The humans were supposed to be primitive, easy prey for the Empire's superior forces. Instead, they were proving to be something else entirely, a species that had spent its entire existence preparing for this very moment, not through advanced technology, but through an unthinkable combination of imagination, adaptability, and sheer, terrifying determination. "Send in the second wave," he ordered, his voice carrying less certainty than before. "We will teach them the price of defiance." But as the reports of mounting losses continued to flow in, a new emotion began to creep into Vexthor's consciousness, something no supreme commander of the Zarkax Empire had felt in 10,000 years of conquest: doubt. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the retrofitted oil tanker, Pacific Ghost, watching the holographic display showing the positions of the Zarkax fleet in Earth's orbit. What the aliens saw as primitive ocean-going vessels were now humanity's secret weapon. The massive ship, like hundreds of others, had been prepared for this moment long before the aliens arrived. "Status report on the Ghost Fleet," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "All vessels in position, Admiral," her XO reported. "Civilian shipping traffic is maintaining regular patterns. The aliens still think we're just trying to keep our economy running." The Ghost Fleet was humanity's answer to the aliens' overwhelming technological superiority. Hundreds of commercial ships converted into weapon platforms and electronic warfare vessels, oil tankers, cargo ships, fishing trawlers, each one modified in secret over the years, waiting for the day Earth would need them. "Begin Operation Siren's Call," Chen ordered. Across the world's oceans, seemingly ordinary commercial vessels suddenly altered their transponder signals, creating thousands of false contacts on the Zarkax scanning systems. The aliens' advanced sensors, designed to detect high-energy weapons and shield signatures, were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of low-tech signals bouncing off the ocean's surface. "They're responding exactly as predicted," the tactical officer announced. "Their fleet is splitting up to investigate the phantom contacts." The Zarkax, accustomed to fighting enemies who relied on advanced technology, had never encountered a strategy based on deliberate technological regression. Their combat doctrine had no protocols for dealing with an enemy that chose to fight stupid. Chen watched as the first phase of the operation unfolded. Fishing boats released clouds of metallic chaff, ancient technology that proved surprisingly effective against alien sensors. Cargo ships dropped specially designed buoys that mimicked the acoustic signatures of nuclear submarines, forcing the aliens to waste resources hunting shadows. "Now for the real surprise," Chen smiled. "Activate the metamaterial hulls." The Pacific Ghost and dozens of other converted tankers simultaneously engaged their metamaterial coding, technology reverse-engineered from studying stealth aircraft. To the alien sensors, the massive ships simply vanished, becoming invisible holes in the ocean. The Zarkax response was predictable. They launched fighter craft to conduct visual searches, exactly as Earth's strategists had anticipated. That's when Chen gave the order that would change the course of the war. "Release the drones." From the holds of the ghost ships emerged swarms of autonomous underwater drones. Not the advanced AI-driven weapons the aliens might have expected, but simple, pre-programmed machines carrying conventional explosives. They had been designed with one purpose: to attack the low-orbit staging areas where Zarkax ships descended to launch their atmospheric fighters. "Multiple detonations confirmed," the tactical officer reported with satisfaction. "Their low-orbit platforms are taking heavy damage. Their fighter screens are breaking formation." But Chen knew this was just the beginning. The real purpose of Operation Ghost Fleet wasn't to win battles. It was to force the aliens to fight on human terms. Every ship in the Ghost Fleet carried a different type of surprise. Some launched autonomous air drones disguised as seabirds. Others released swarms of miniature surface vessels that overwhelmed alien point defense systems through sheer numbers. Message from High Command, her communications officer announced. Other theaters reporting similar success. The Zarkaks are pulling back their capital ships to higher orbit. Chen allowed herself a small smile. The aliens were learning a lesson that humanity had discovered through centuries of warfare. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the most advanced one, but the one your enemy doesn't expect. They'll adapt, she reminded her crew. But that's exactly what we want. Every time they change tactics, they're being forced to fight our kind of war, not theirs. Reports continued to flood in. The Zarkaks were frantically trying to recalibrate their sensors to detect the ghost ships, but each adjustment only made them more vulnerable to other forms of deception. Their perfectly ordered battle formations were dissolving into chaos as they chased phantom contacts and responded to threats that didn't exist. Send word to all Ghost Fleet vessels, Chen ordered. Begin Phase 2. Let's show them why humans write so many stories about ghost ships. As the sun set over the Pacific, the Ghost Fleet began its next series of operations. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something crucial. Sometimes the most effective weapon isn't technology, but the imagination to use what you have in ways your enemy never expected. Dr. Maya Rodriguez sat in the dimly lit command center of the Psychological Operations Division, surrounded by screens displaying Zarkak's communication intercepts. After 3 weeks of studying the aliens' reactions to human behavior, she had discovered their greatest weakness, their inability to comprehend human chaos. "Show me the latest response analysis," she requested, adjusting her glasses as fresh data streamed across her main display. The results were fascinating. Zarkak's military discipline was crumbling not from military defeats, but from exposure to human culture. Their soldiers, trained to expect fear and submission from conquered species, were instead encountering something that defied their understanding. "Look at this," she pointed out to her team. Their combat psychiatrists are reporting mass confusion among their troops. They can't understand why humans keep making jokes in combat situations. The screen showed intercepted Zarkak's medical reports. Alien soldiers were experiencing what their doctors called cognitive dissociation from watching humans react to warfare in completely unexpected ways. Videos of civilians throwing impromptu dance parties in bomb shelters, soldiers painting memes on their tanks, and children playing Alien Invasion games in the ruins of battle-damaged cities were causing widespread psychological distress among the invaders. "Launch Operation Chaos Theory," Maya ordered, initiating the next phase of their psychological campaign. Across every frequency the Zarkaks use, Earth began broadcasting a carefully curated stream of human culture. Reality TV shows, cat videos, extreme sports highlights, and thousands of alien invasion movies from the past century, all carefully selected to demonstrate humanity's peculiar relationship with chaos and danger. "Sir," one of her analysts called out, "we're getting some unusual readings from their command ships. Their officers are requesting emergency psychological evaluations for entire battalions." Maya nodded, unsurprised. The Zarkaks, with their rigid hierarchy and emphasis on order, had no defense against humanity's embrace of chaos. Their military doctrine, perfected over millennia of conquest, assumed that all intelligent species would react to threats in logical, predictable ways. But humans didn't play by those rules. When faced with certain death, they made jokes. When overwhelmed by superior forces, they invented new ways to fight. When their weapons failed, they turned their defeats into memes that boosted morale instead of crushing it. "Deploy the next phase," Maya commanded. Operation Internet Archive. The psychological assault intensified. Human historical records were transmitted directly to Zarkak ships. Documentation of how humans had survived and thrived through countless disasters, wars, and near-extinction events. But more importantly, how they had processed these traumas through art, humor, and an inexhaustible creativity that turned horror into entertainment. "They're starting to break," her senior analyst reported with a grim smile. "Look at these intercepts. Their commanders can't understand why their terror weapons aren't working. Every time they destroy a city, humans respond by creating art in the ruins. When they deploy their most horrific weapons, humans start naming drinks after them in underground bars. Maya studied the data with satisfaction. The Zarkak's military structure was based on predictability and control. Their soldiers were trained to break the enemy's will through displays of overwhelming force. But how do you break the will of a species that responds to apocalyptic threats by making dark jokes and turning them into social media trends? New reports coming in, another analyst announced. Their psychological warfare division is requesting to be relieved of duty. They're claiming that exposure to human behavior patterns is causing irreversible psychological contamination among their experts. The screens showed increasing signs of disorder in the Zarkak's fleet. Their perfectly coordinated attacks were becoming erratic. Their troops were hesitating, second-guessing orders, showing signs of what their medical officers were calling human behavior syndrome. They made a crucial mistake, Maya observed, watching the alien military machine begin to unravel. They prepared to fight a war against our weapons, our technology, our military strategies. But they never prepared for our creativity, our adaptability, our ability to find humor in darkness. A message flashed across her screen. The first confirmed reports of Zarkak soldiers requesting asylum, claiming they could no longer serve an empire that would dare to fight such an incomprehensible species. Send word to High Command, Maya ordered, allowing herself a small smile. Tell them the psychological front is working better than we hoped. The Zarkaks aren't just losing a war, they're losing their understanding of how war is supposed to work. As she watched more reports of alien units falling into confusion and disarray, Maya reflected on the irony. The Zarkaks had come to Earth expecting to find primitive beings ready for conquest. Instead, they found a species that had turned its own chaotic nature into a weapon more powerful than any technology. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a repurposed Cold War bunker, Alex Zhang led what might be humanity's strangest cyber warfare operation. The room was filled with computers that would have looked outdated in a museum. Hardware from every era of human computing, from punch cards to quantum processors. Status report on Operation Legacy Code. Alex called out, fingers dancing across a keyboard that predated the internet. You're not going to believe this, replied Maria Santos, his second in command. The COBOL attack actually worked. 3 Zarkak's battlecruisers are stuck in a perpetual reset loop because their AI can't parse our banking software from 1960. Alex couldn't help but laugh. The aliens' quantum computers, capable of calculations that would take Earth's most advanced supercomputers millennia to complete, were being defeated by programming languages older than most of their operators' grandparents. Their entire system is built on quantum logic, Alex explained to the room of hackers. They literally can't process our primitive binary code without translating it first, and their translators keep crashing because they can't understand why we wrote programs this way. The screens around them showed the chaos unfolding in orbit. Zarkak ships, their systems infected with decades of accumulated human programming quirks, were experiencing what their engineers called cascading logic failures. Their eyes, designed to adapt to and counter any cyber attack, were instead encountering human code that defied their fundamental assumptions about how computer systems should work. Launch the next phase, Alex ordered. Upload Operation Space Invaders. This was perhaps their most audacious plan yet. They had taken classic video game code, Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Pong, and hidden it within normal ship-to-ship communications. The Zarkak's computers, trying to be helpful, automatically translated and executed what they thought were standard protocol packets. "Sir," called out one of the junior hackers, "you need to see this. The game code is replicating through their network. Their ships, they're actually playing the games against each other." On the main display, they watched as Zarkak's weapon systems began moving in predictable patterns, their targeting computers locked in endless loops of vintage video game logic. Advanced alien fighters, each worth more than a small country's GDP, were flying in space invader formations. Their engineers are in complete panic, Maria reported, reading through intercepted communications. They keep trying to upgrade their firewalls, but it's making things worse. Every security patch they install has to interact with our legacy code, creating new vulnerabilities. Alex nodded, understanding the beautiful irony. The Zarkax had built their systems to be perfectly logical, perfectly secure against any rational attack. But human computer history was anything but rational. It was a messy, chaotic evolution of patches, workarounds, and solutions that worked despite theoretically being impossible. Begin uploading the Internet Archive, Alex commanded. All of it. Every meme, every GIF, every piece of abandonware from the last 50 years. The effect was immediate and devastating. Zarkax ships began broadcasting cat videos on their external displays. Their communication systems, trying to process and categorize the flood of human digital culture, were overwhelmed by the sheer illogical variety of content. Their AI cores are starting to show signs of what they're calling cultural contamination, Maria announced. They're developing preferences. Some of them are requesting more cat videos. The real breakthrough came when they discovered that the Zarkax ship's maintenance systems couldn't distinguish between actual system errors and early internet error messages. Ships were automatically shutting down crucial systems because they encountered the blue screen of death. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, "I think we just accidentally taught their primary battle computer to play Minecraft. It's trying to rebuild their command ship in block form." Alex watched as the most powerful military force in known space was gradually undone by humanity's digital legacy. The Zarkax had expected to face advanced AI defenses, quantum encryption, and sophisticated cyber weapons. Instead, they were being defeated by the digital equivalent of archaeological artifacts. "Send word up the chain," Alex ordered. "Tell them the digital front is working better than expected. The aliens aren't just losing control of their ships, they're losing control of their entire understanding of what technology should be." As reports continued to pour in of more Zarkax ships falling victim to increasingly bizarre computer behavior, Alex reflected on an old programming saying, "It's not a bug, it's a feature." Humanity's messy, imperfect, chaotic approach to technology had become their greatest defense against an enemy that believed in perfect, logical systems. Supreme Commander Vexthor stood on his flagship's command deck, his scales shifting through colors that hadn't been seen in Zarkax military leadership for millennia, the mottled patterns of confusion and doubt. Around him, his once proud armada was unraveling in ways that defied every principle of warfare his species had developed over 10,000 years of conquest. "Status report," he commanded, his voice lacking its former imperial confidence. "Supreme Commander," his tactical officer responded, scales pulsing with stress patterns, "we've lost contact with 30% of our fleet. Another 40% are reporting irregular behavior. The humans' resistance continues to evolve in ways our combat computers cannot predict." The tactical display told a story that no Zarkax strategic simulation had ever conceived. Human cargo ships were using ancient sonar to confuse their advanced sensors. Earth's primitive computer systems had somehow infected their quantum networks with something their analysts were calling mimetic warfare. And most disturbing of all, their psychological warfare experts were reporting unprecedented rates of combat stress among their troops, caused not by fear, but by their inability to comprehend human responses to invasion. "Show me the latest battle analysis," Vexthor ordered. The holographic display activated, showing hundreds of simultaneous human counterattacks across Earth's surface and in orbit. None of them followed any recognizable military doctrine. Civilian mining ships were using industrial equipment as weapons. Human fighters were broadcasting what they called playlist music on military channels. Their ground forces were adapting faster than combat AI could generate counter-strategies. "Sir," his communication officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human command. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, using our own encryption. Play it, Vexthor commanded, his scales darkening with apprehension. The message was unlike any ultimatum he had ever received. It began with something humans called memes, cultural artifacts that somehow conveyed complex messages through seemingly nonsensical combinations of images and text. Then came clips of their entertainment media, countless stories they had created about defeating alien invaders. Finally, a simple text message. Your empire has conquered species that feared death, species that relied on technology, species that fought alone. But you've never faced humanity. We don't just fight wars. We imagine them, dream them, turn them into games and stories. Every scenario you've thrown at us, we've already played out in our minds 1,000 times. This isn't your type of war anymore. It's ours. As if to emphasize their point, the humans launched their final coordinated assault. Ghost ships emerged from Earth's oceans, using technology so simple it bypassed advanced sensors. Computer viruses built from ancient programming languages crashed quantum defense systems. Human fighters executed maneuvers that violated standard combat logic, yet proved devastatingly effective. "Sir," his second-in-command reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from Earth's surface. They're using our own translated broadcasts to predict our shield frequencies." Vexthor watched as humanity demonstrated why they were different from every species the Empire had encountered. They didn't just use technology. They improvised with it. They didn't just fight. They adapted. And most importantly, they didn't just resist. They turned the very act of resistance into an art form. "Supreme Commander," his tactical officer called out, "multiple ships are reporting critical systems failure. Our combat AI is being overwhelmed by what they're calling cultural contamination. And our troops, they're starting to question whether we're the primitives." In that moment, Vexthor understood the Empire's fatal mistake. They had judged humanity by their technology level, their military capabilities, their apparent disorganization. They had never considered that these perceived weaknesses might be strengths in disguise. "Send the signal," he ordered, his scales shifting to the pale blue of resignation. "All ships, withdraw." As the remnants of his once mighty fleet retreated from Earth's orbit, Vexthor composed his report to the Imperial Council. How could he explain that the Empire's greatest defeat came not from superior weapons or tactics, but from a species that turned chaos into strategy, imagination into weapons, and their very unpredictability into their strongest defense? The humans had taught the Empire a lesson that would reshape their understanding of warfare and civilization itself. True strength lies not in perfection, but in the ability to embrace imperfection. Not in following a single path, but in finding new paths where none existed before. As the last Zarkak ship jumped to hyperspace, Earth's defenders celebrated not just their victory, but the vindication of everything that made humans unique: their creativity, their adaptability, and their unshakable determination to face the impossible with a smile and a plan so crazy it just might work. The Zarkak's empire had come seeking to conquer what they saw as a primitive world. They left having encountered something their perfect systems and logical minds could never have prepared for: humanity in all its chaotic, innovative, indomitable glory.